Hi guys, just doing a wee video on how to brush. No, just on the barbell remaining deadlift at home practice video, because in all the years I've been coaching, I would say that of all the sort of fundamental basic movement patterns, it's the remaining deadlift, i.e. the hip hinge pattern, that is the one that takes the longest to get. And it's so crucial because in order to, like, you need to get this movement right, not just for barbell RDLs, but for rows, kettlebell swings, and pretty much every exercise in between. So it's a really important, like, that you learn to engage through the hips, basically. So a lot of folks struggle with this, which probably hasn't been helped by a sort of like general theme on social media the last like 5-10 years about how it's okay to round your back and that people need to round their spine when they lift. Now, that may be true, but in my opinion, everyone's missed, not everyone, right? But the people have missed the forest for the trees with that message, because the whole point is that if you're wanting to like properly engage through your hips and your hamstrings, you need to keep a more neutral spine. You're not going to work your hips as effectively. Like you can't work into the glute and the hip if you're rounding. So yeah, you might be able to lift it, and yeah, it might help give you a big strong back, or it might not lead to back pain by rounding when you're lifting. But it depends what your goal is. If your goal is to successfully and effectively strengthen and train the hips in an athletic manner for the purpose of like jumping and sprinting, etc., then that is not as desirable as that. Like you need, yeah, you can do both, but you need to be able to properly get this position here in order to get the glutes and hamstrings working. So a really easy way to practice it in the house when it comes to the barbell RDL and the general hip hinge is if you just put a brush behind your back like this. It should be in contact with your upper back, between your shoulder blades and your lower back here, or just at your backside. And all you're going to do, if you're doing the barbell, the hip hinge properly, you'll hip hinge back, and the brush will maintain contact with like your upper back. Oh, without sliding off, it will maintain contact with your upper back and this point here at your the top of your backside. Okay, so if you round when you lift, then the brush comes away from your upper back, or it will come away from the lower position. So it just helps give you a bit of a feedback cue, and you can just do it at home. Just practice the whole concept of slightly soft knees, we call it. So you don't need to keep them locked. Slight bend the knee, then just push your hips back, and just be aware of what's happening here. Okay, so obviously when you get a barbell and you start doing a barbell, it gets a wee bit more tricky because there's weight on the other side of the bar, and the weight's going to pull, it's going to try and pull your shoulders forward. So you need to really work hard to, again, bringing in the glutes and the hips. These muscles have to work harder to maintain a neutral spine, as do the muscles at the upper back. So there's a lot going on, like to do this movement correctly. Okay, so that's the movement there. Slight soft knees. You're just going to push your hips back. As you push your hips back, the bar should remain in contact with your quads. In terms of how far to go, it depends on the individual. If you're really flexible, you might feel you need to go lower in order to feel your hamstrings being stretched under load, which is essentially what a barbell RDL is. But if you're quite tight, maybe you're a guy that plays a lot of football and you're notoriously tight in your hamstrings, you might find that just going to there is enough right now to feel a nice, pretty loaded stretch. And then over time, you want to obviously be able to increase that, which would be an example of like increasing strength through length. So you're increasing the flexibility in the hamstring and the pliability of it, while also strengthening it at the same time. So just practice that movement there. You need to, as I said, work hard to make sure that the bar doesn't come away from you, and you need to use the upper back muscles as well as the hips to keep everything nice and tight. The last thing I would remember or recommend is that a lot of folk, when they do this movement, they do it pretty much correctly for the most part, other than they lean back through and they put too much weight on their heels like this. That's not what you're aiming to keep a weight distribution even through the heel, the ball of the foot and the small foot. So as you push your hips back, you want the weight to come like you want to keep the weight even to the mid part of your foot. So the ball of your foot should be nice and solid into the ground. And if you do that, you'll notice a huge difference. You'll feel the load going right through the belly of your hamstring, right in the middle of it, and it's just a much more effective way to do it. So be aware of weight distribution. Don't sit, because if you're pushing your hips back, a lot of folk will sit through their heels. They might even curl their toes up, but you don't really want to do that. Right, hips back while keeping your feet grounded. Okay, hope that helps.